Welcome back to The Connection Effect. I'm Bill Groner, your host. In our last reflection episode, we explored the inner conditions for flourishing and what our early guests taught us about emotional regulation, curiosity, growth, agency, and sometimes simply letting go. Today, we turn outward, because once we begin doing the inner work, another question naturally follows. How do we bring that into our relationships? How do we listen better, disagree better, stay open when it would be easier to simply close down, and connect across difference without losing ourselves? Over our first 5 episodes, one theme came through again and again. The quality of our relationships is shaped not just by what we believe, but by how we show up, our emotional well-being, our assumptions, our curiosity, our emotional state, and our willingness to see another more than just as a person in a group, but see them for themselves. So, today, Sahar and I are reflecting on what these conversations taught us about the relational conditions for connection. Sahar, let's jump in.
Hi, Bill. So, when I think about our earlier episodes, Monica Guzman feels like such a central voice for this conversation because she reminds us that disconnection often starts before the conversation even begins. We so rarely walk into conversations as blank slates. We bring with us assumptions, stories, predictions, and stereotypes. And the real work isn't pretending that we don't have them, it's noticing them. Let's hear what Monica has to say.
I think of it as a vicious cycle that we're trapped in. We're judging each other more while we engage each other less. And what do we know about what it takes to get to know each other? Well, what I know for myself is that if somebody else out there reads an article about people who voted the way I did, or people who look the way I do, or who have the background that I do, and then those people decide that because they read some expert's take on people like me, they then know me? I know that's hogwash. I know that's complete crap. You don't know me until you know me. And the best way to get to know me is to talk to me. Ask me questions. Figure me out. So when we judge each other more while we engage each other less, if you fast forward on that dynamic, judge each other more, engage each other less, what are our judgments based on? They're not based on engaging each other. They're not based on asking each other questions, talking to each other. More and more, they're based on fear-driven assumptions that we have about each other. Ones that seem validated by the people we're surrounding ourselves with. We're sorting into like-minded groups. And so the air you breathe, the water you swim in, becomes what you find natural. And you start to receive signals about other people through layers and layers and layers of judgment. On social media, in the news, whatever it happens to be, you've picked your preferred voices. And when those voices talk about people who are different from you in kind of an opposing and threatening way, you don't hear anything accurate. And we see the research on this too. It's called the perception gap. Across the political divide, from both ends, there's often something like a 30-point difference between, for example, what Democrats think Republicans think versus what Republicans actually think, right? And what Republicans think Democrats think versus what Democrats actually think. We see this over and over and over again. So even people who consider themselves informed in that they read a lot of news still appear to be highly misinformed about people. So I think about it as there's misinformation about news and events, and boy, has that misinformation gotten a lot of attention lately, and it's become part of our partisan battles, who's misinforming who, and what do we do about misinformation, and what we hope to maintain as a free society. But I'm more concerned about a more dangerous type of misinformation. It's not misinformation about news and events, it's misinformation about what's in people's hearts. And that's the type of misinformation that more news right now in this polarized society isn't doing a lot to fix.
The phrase that really struck me there was misinformation about what's in people's hearts. I think that's so much harder to fix than misinformation about facts or events. So, Bill, what does this clip bring up for you?
I love her conversation about the fact that we all generalize, stereotype, put people into groups, and then make assumptions about what they believe because of what we think the group believes. We're shrinking the number of people we speak to. If we look at people as part of a group and we think that they then believe this, we're going to perhaps engage less. And I think the last thing you want to do in this world is shrink your exposures. I think you want to grow your exposures. By growing them, you allow yourself to be curious. Curious about people who think differently. Curious about different ways for you to think of things. And what curiosity does is you learn not just about the other person and maybe their position, and maybe if you ask great questions, you learn more about their values and principles, and may find that you have more commonality than you would have expected. But you also give the other person a chance during this curiosity to reconsider their beliefs. And you also learn yourself about the issue, and maybe you reconsider how you think of it. My biggest concern about shrinking these conversations instead of expanding them is we're also losing the opportunity for nuance. People seem to be very binary lately. They either believe this candidate or they don't. And isn't it plausible that this leader or this politician has some things that you agree with and that you disagree with? People think that, for example, on the left, that if you did not vote for Trump, that you believe that everything he's doing is wrong. And that's a generalization. I mean, people on the left support some of the policies that Trump is doing. And the same thing is people on the left think sometimes that, oh, if you voted for Trump, that you support everything he's doing. And that's unfair because certainly people who voted for him support some things, but maybe they don't support other things. So where's the nuance in society and in conversation instead of things being black and white?
Bill, what I want to hear from you is if you have a story about someone that you're friends with that's on the other side of the political spectrum. I know that this is something that is really hard for a lot of people, including myself. We tend to bucket people and assume that we know what they believe. And again, to Monica's points, we don't know what's in their hearts. And I think you have such a beautiful way of being able to maintain your friendships and have the hard conversations and navigate them.
I want to understand people who believe differently than me as much as I possibly can. I want to grow. I want to ask questions, even though sometimes the answers are painful to hear. I have a friend in high school who voted for a different candidate and has a different posture. And I wanted to understand, like Monica says, what was in his heart. I needed to understand what he believed and why he believed it. Not necessarily to better judge him, but I knew he was a reasonable, logical, smart, God-fearing person and a wonderful man. And I knew there were reasons why he supported a candidate other than me, and we spoke about it. And even though I was a little trepidatious at the beginning for what I was going to hear, we had a series of marvelous conversations where you find that, if you take away the extremes of society, the extreme left, the extreme right, there is so much more commonality than people realize. Jonathan Haidt talks about the fact that most of us share the same values and have the same principles and the same beliefs. We may prioritize them differently. And I think that's what I found. I found that my high school friend was a good, reasonable man who, which I expected, but had bases for his beliefs, and they were not unreasonable. And I walked away having enhanced respect for him because going in, I probably had a bias that, he believes that that candidate is a good candidate, and therefore maybe, there's a lack of reason there. So it was a fabulous, opportunity. And I think we should all try and find that courage to talk to friends and loved ones who believe differently. I'm not saying that it should happen all the time. Not all of us need to interact with or confront or discuss with dear friends or family who believe differently. It depends upon what your goal is in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I know for myself, and I just wonder if some of us are avoiding having those conversations because we're afraid of what we might learn.
Well, I think the first thing is, let's take a dear friend or family member that believes differently than you, or has a different candidate, or is on a different side of the left-right political aisle. I think the first thing you want to do is consider, what's the goal of me interacting with that person. There's many different goals for conversations, and if you have a sense of what the goal is, I think you'll have a better mindset of how to approach it. So the goal could be just to connect, to understand. And that's what I did with my high school friend. I just needed to understand his belief systems and feel as though the commonality that he and I had was still there. And it was. And that was, I just wanted to understand and connect with him. There may be other reasons to interact. You may want to, with that family member or friend, share your own perspective. And that's a different lens and a different approach. Or you may want to try and convince them of your position. But if that's what you're going to do, then recognize that that is something that you could consider to be a debate or an attempt at persuasion. You got to make sure the other person's interested in doing that. And you may even want to call it out and say, hey, let's have a little fun debate on immigration. And let's share our perspectives and see if we can convince each other. At least you have an intention that's honest. You're being authentic with each other. And you're probably going to realize that goal. Or another goal for a conversation could be to find compromise. Again, I would think that you'd want to state that intention in advance of, hey, let's talk about this and see where we agree. In our workshops lately, we ask a political question. Lately, it's been, when should the U.S. intervene in another country's internal affairs? And we give people the goal of find 3 ways in which you agree. It's a wonderful exercise because it allows people to practice active listening and curiosity, but also look at the nuance of language and policy and figure out where they agree. And my gosh, the last time we did this at University of Pennsylvania at an undergraduate psychology class where you and I did that together, Sahar, boy, the room was just buzzing. There was near 100 people, and they engaged in a fabulous conversation, and they felt comfortable in doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was beautiful to see. And I think your point about what is the goal, what is the intention of the conversation is something that doesn't take too long to think about, but I don't know how often we actually do that, you know? The other thing I wanted to point out, Bill, is that because of the nature of the conversation with Monica, it was very much about the political landscape and how to have these difficult conversations when you're on opposite sides. But it's not always about politics, right? It could be about anything, religion, social issues, any important issue. And so I just wanted to call that out, that this is applicable across topics, not just politics.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, these skills and these concepts deal with any time people are engaging with each other where they may disagree. And it could be roommates in terms of how clean to keep the room. It could be, parent-child in terms of all the different matters that arise between them. It could be at work between a boss and an employee or 2 teammates working. The opportunity and the challenge for certain conversations where people have different perspectives is ever present.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to another episode. So with Monica, she named the problem that we're judging more and we're engaging less. Scott Barry Kaufman offers something that feels like a way through. And what struck me about his answer is both how simple it is and how much it asks of us at the same time. So let's hear that.
Well, I really do hope that people across political divides can find a way of acknowledging each other's pain and acknowledging where they're coming from, at the very least, even if you don't agree with it. So that's something I really care a lot about, and I actually I'm co-hosting a new podcast with Second City Improv where we have conversations. It's called This Might Get Awkward, and it's with wide assortment of people, some people controversial, where we try to ask them, how can we use the tools of comedy and improv and psychology to unite the world, to find some peace amongst such a fractionated world that we live in, and I feel like there's hope for it. I've seen hope for it, through the podcasts we've done and lots of conversations I have, even with the listening tables at Columbia University.
So Scott talks about hope, that he's seen it actually work in his own conversations and his research. Bill, what do you make of that this idea of acknowledging someone's pain without needing to agree with their conclusions?
Well, first let's start with the premise that we live in a very complex world. And it's not as though we have a group of people that are absolutely flourishing without issues and another group that are having problems making it through every day. I think every one of us, works towards finding our best harmony with ourselves and life. And through that process, there's good days and bad days and good thoughts and bad thoughts. So no matter who you're talking to, there's the opportunity for people to be authentic with each other and express true pain. And what I loved about what Scott's talking about is acknowledging the other person's pain. I'm a firm believer in cognitive empathy, which is different than emotional empathy. Emotional empathy is where you're feeling. You have emotions that are consistent with another person's feelings. But cognitive empathy is different. It's being aware of another person's thoughts and feelings. And that awareness is huge. I think the more cognitive empathy we can all have about the people that we're interacting with and other members of society and the pain that they have and the joy that they have, the more connected we are. And the more cognitive empathy that you can have, I think the more you're telling the other person and the rest of society, you matter. What you're going through is also important to me and to the world. So another thing, acknowledging another person's pain or having empathy doesn't mean you're endorsing their beliefs. You're not signing off that, oh, I now agree with you. And some people don't want to share empathy for people they disagree with because they think they're showing support for their belief system. And that's unfortunate. Telling somebody, I hear you, I feel your pain, that you feel this way about something, is saying simply that I care about you. Another thing that Scott did mention was comedy, and he was going to be looking at doing some work in Second City Improv. Comedy or humor is such a great antidote to tension. So for all of us, and I need to remember this as well as probably all of us do, that when you're interacting with somebody and there's tension, whether it's political discourse or other disagreements, maybe not taking it so seriously all the time and making a joke, showing the other person that you care, but diffusing the tension is one of the most simplest and effective tools at breaking down that tension.
I really want to listen to some of these episodes with the improv. It sounds really fun. And we could all use a laugh. We could all use some comedy. So let's talk about Todd's episode. Todd Kashdan brought something into this that I feel is really important. It's a little bit of a departure from the episode with Monica. And he talks about the idea that the relationships we've built with people don't have to be held hostage by political differences. So Todd's argument is almost a permission slip that you don't have to agree with someone on everything for that relationship to matter. So he says that relationships, that they might be more important than the ideology itself. Let's listen to his clip.
One of the elephants in the room here, and you mentioned politics indirectly, but I think I'd like to go there more directly. I see a lot of pain from people feeling that they so disagree with those politically disparate that they don't feel as though we're a cohesive society. And you know, our work at Positive Connection Initiatives, we do dialogue workshops that are based on curiosity and active listening so that people can understand each other. And we've had some profound results thus far, and we're really just starting. Can you talk about your thoughts about using curiosity to bridge divides?
A ton. Every time this conversation comes up, I get tons of pushback, which is great. It tells me that it's an important topic. One of the things is there are social relationships that you have and that you will have that are more important than your political ideology. And you can hold really strong political views and simultaneously be friends with people that don't vote the same way as you. And I think some people feel that this is impossible in this day and age. It's unacceptable. It's morally reprehensible. And I want to argue, based on what we know about the importance of friendships and trust and value and deep shared vulnerability, that there are times and places where people are supportive, irrespective of where they stand on political issues. And so, as a perfect example, if you have an old friend in your life who was there for you when you had cancer or some health scare, or was there for you when you were grieving the loss of a child or a parent, or even like the grief I'm experiencing because I just sent off my twins to college for the first time. So there's this grief that I've never heard of before that anyone said out loud, is like, all of a sudden, this is the longest time period. It's now been 3 weeks that I've ever spent away from 2 of my 3 daughters in my entire life, because there's a grief there that I'm going through. Irrespective of whatever you believe in politically, if we can meet there, talk about that, and just like ruminate about that, problem solve about that, I mean, we can connect at such an important level at the nexus of who I am in terms of being a father. And I don't want to know who you voted for, don't care who you voted for. Like, if I see that you are a caring, loving parent invested in your kids, that value system is enough that I can hold. And if you're supportive and you're receptive, is that you don't have to be open and supportive or receptive in every dimension of human functioning. And I think if there is one plea for the world, it's that it's okay to have friends that are really valuable in slivers or even very specific elements of your life, and nobody should be provided the nutrients for every part of your life.
What I love about what Todd is saying is that he's not asking us to find common ground on the big stuff. He's saying, find the human being first. Bill, I'm really curious to hear what you think about this clip.
So a few years ago, Sue and I went out, my wife Sue and I went out to dinner with a few friends. And you know it, when you have great conversation, people are talking about movies and, their kids or their friends and what are they up to lately. And you go around the table and you talk about stuff. And at some point I went around the table and I asked people some question about the meaning of life, because that's just what turns me on, talking about that stuff. And multiple people rolled their eyes. And I was disappointed. And I went home and I talked to Sue afterwards about it. And I realized that these are good friends. We have a lot in common. We enjoy the heck out of each other. So what that this is not the group for me to ask those philosophical questions. And that's what I love about what Todd discussed, which is not every friend has to be the perfect person to talk about all of the things that you want to talk about. Some friends, will talk about sports. Some of your friends will be that philosophy crowd. Some will be, where you talk about your music and concerts. And some you'll talk about politics. So I don't know that if you have a long time friend that you have different beliefs in terms of the political spectrum, that is a bar to that friendship. Maybe that's just not the friend for you to have political conversations with. It's a judgment. And at the end of the day, when we do believe differently than long-term friends about political issues, you sort of want to figure out, well, is that because we diverge on values? Do I still recognize the importance of the length of our relationship, the depth of our relationship, the amount of shared experiences? And is that more important than the fact that we voted for different candidates? So I'm a firm believer now of different friends for different needs.
Yeah. Spot on. I mean, I think a lot of us, if not everyone listening, can relate to that. You kind of, based on whatever you're going through in that moment, and I'm going through this now, is you have certain people in your life that serve certain needs that you have. And it's unrealistic to expect one person to fill all of them. So that was wonderful. Thank you, Bill. So Andrew Souther's work keeps coming back to me in this context. We talked about him in our last episode in terms of the body and regulation, but there's a relational dimension to what he's saying that I don't want to skip over. When we accumulate stress over the course of the day from back-to-back meetings, difficult interactions, and just the noise of life, our physiology gets to a place where we can't make our best decisions. And I think that has everything to do with how we show up with other people.
I think all of us deal with stress in all of our lines of work and all of our careers or arenas that we're in. It could be something as simple as back-to-back meetings, right? It could be something as simple as just having a difficult conversation with a peer or a coworker or a family member. Those can all drive our physiology to a place of sympathetic arousal. And if you accumulate that arousal through the course of a long day, right, 3, 4, 5 meetings, then you have to go make a decision on something that's really important. Your physiology might not be in the best place to make the best decision.
I think that's a piece that a lot of times gets overlooked. Bill, what does regulating your state actually make possible in a conversation?
To me, emotional awareness and regulation is critical for living the best life and certainly having the best difficult conversations. I firmly believe that virtually every bad conversation you have isn't bad because of what the other person said. It's bad because how you respond to it. And the way in which you respond to it, if it's emotional, is not going to be healthy. If you go into the conversation with emotion, it is going to be very difficult to keep that emotion away from the conversation. And important conversations, you want to deal more with reason and care and beliefs, but put the emotion to the side. Not the easiest thing to do, but that's why we talk about emotional awareness before you even have the conversation. So one rule is if somebody wants to have a conversation with you, even if it's a partner, or just about a partnership issue, or a family member, or a spouse, you have to make sure it's the right time and the right place. You have to make sure that your emotions are at a base level so you're not going to overreact to what they say. And I think whenever you feel as though things are not going well, you should either pause, take a breath, step back for a second, and regulate your emotion. Or tell the other person, you know what, I'm feeling a little emotional right now. Can we pick this up again later or tomorrow?
Bill, I love that advice of if you need a break, to make that the norm. That, yeah, I am not my best self right now. This is not the time for me to have this conversation, and I need to take a beat. And then you can use that space to do the breathing exercises, to take a walk, to do whatever you need to do to kind of put some distance between you and whatever activated you. So, Bill, when you step back from these first conversations with Monica, Scott, Todd, and Andrew, What do they collectively teach us about connection to others?
Wow, all in a few sentences. Um,
No big deal.
well, connection to others isn't magic. It's chemistry, but I think it's more. It's a set of mindsets that you have going in, and it's a bunch of practice. Noticing our biases and assumptions and generalizations, but also asking better questions, staying curious, being aware of our emotion and regulating it when you become aware of it, having true cognitive empathy, thinking about what is the other person thinking, what's the other person feeling, and realizing there's two of you in the conversation. To me, these things are the heart of healthy dialogue, healthy relationships, and ultimately a healthy society. And really shows why these two reflection episodes work so well together. I think it's critical for us to realize that the better we become at connecting to ourselves, the more capable we are of bringing steadiness, openness, and sheer humanity into our relationships. To me, that's the connection effect. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for listening. And thanks for doing this work with us. I'm Bill Groner.
And I'm Sahari Mombakhsh.
And this is The Connection Effect. The reflections don't stop here. Visit our Substack at connection.net/Substack and add your voice. We'd love to hear your reflections and any questions you may have. Have a great day.